My parents sold our childhood home to fund my brother's dream business, leaving me homeless. Now he's bankrupt, and they want me to fix everything. I'm 30 now. Never thought I'd be here, telling strangers my entire life story. But the past few months have hit me in a way I can't even put into words. Figured maybe someone out there would understand. Here's the short version. I'm the oldest of 3, me, my sister Liz, 28, and my little brother Derek, the golden child. Always was, always will be. You know the type. Could mess up 100 times, and my parents would find a way to call it a learning experience or a rough patch. Me. I've been the reliable one since I was old enough to tie my shoes. Set a good example, they'd say. Be a role model. That translated to me doing more chores, keeping my grades up, taking care of Derek and Liz whenever my parents were too tired. Liz and I joked about it sometimes, that Derek must have some superpower or something because he had a knack for getting away with everything. When we were teenagers, I saved up for almost a year doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, just so I could buy this guitar I'd wanted forever. Finally got it, my pride and joy. Derek borrowed it a week later, snuck it out to show off to his friends, and came back with a cracked neck. I confronted him, but my parents? They told me, he's your brother, he didn't mean it. Why are you making such a big deal? Just like that, my work and my savings down the drain. There's a whole list of stories like this. While I was working part-time in high school to save up for college, my parents took some of the money I'd earned for family groceries. Said it was to teach me responsibility, but Derek was never asked to chip in. When I left for college, the savings they'd promised would help me through my first year had already been spent. Most of it on a wellness retreat they'd taken Derek on after he'd gotten into a fight. I took out loans to cover what they'd promised me. Still, I told myself it's family. Maybe things would even out over time. Then last year, Derek comes up with the grand idea of starting his own business. He's into all this drop shipping stuff, telling anyone who'll listen that he's going to make 6 figures in 6 months. It's all about passive income and working smart. He has no savings, no real plan. Just a YouTube video he's watched on repeat and some scribbled ideas in a notebook. But that doesn't matter because my parents are sold. They're convinced he's got what it takes. Problem is, Derek doesn't have a dime. So where do they turn? They offer to sell our childhood home. The place Liz and I grew up. The one thing that actually had value and history in it for all of us. They sold it for over $300,000 and handed almost every penny to Derek. Called it a family investment. Said it was a chance for him to find his purpose. Liz and I got about $5,000 each, which was supposed to make up for, I guess, losing our home and any inheritance. I asked them if they'd thought this through, if they really trusted Derek to run a business when he couldn't even handle a part-time job. My mom looked at me like I just slapped her and said, "Family is about sacrifices, honey. We can always buy another house, but Derek has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. You should support him." So Derek got the money. First thing he did? Rented a big office space. Bought high-end equipment. Hired a couple of his friends to help him. He didn't even have a single client yet. And every time I asked how it was going, my parents would say, "These things take time." They couldn't see what was right in front of them. Liz and I kept our distance, watching it all unfold like a slow-motion train wreck. The business tanked in less than a year. Derek burned through every dollar, and once he was done, he couldn't even look anyone in the eye. My parents? They were heartbroken, but not at him. No, it was the economy and bad timing. They blamed everything but him. And then they came to me with their newest idea. I should step in. They hinted first, and when I didn't bite, they came out and said it. Maybe I could help Derek out by letting him stay with me a while. Maybe I could even bring him into my own marketing business, help him gain some skills. I told them I couldn't. Firmly. Then they went bigger. They asked if I'd consider selling my condo and splitting the money with him. They said it'd give him a chance to start fresh, with guidance from someone responsible. I almost laughed. I told them no way. My condo was the one thing I'd managed to get for myself. It took years of scrimping and saving and busting my ass at a job I didn't even like, and they were asking me to hand half of it over to Derek? I told them straight up that Derek was an adult who needed to learn to deal with his own failures. That didn't go over well. My mom started crying, saying I was abandoning my family, accusing me of tearing us apart. My dad gave me the whole "we raised you better" speech, like I was some traitor to the family. They'd done so much for me, apparently. My mom even went on about how I'd broken her heart and how she thought I was a good son. It was exhausting. For the first time in my life, I saw just how little they actually valued me compared to Derek. But they didn't stop there. They tried to turn Liz against me, telling her to talk some sense into me. Said it was time for me to give back to the family that had done everything for me. Liz just laughed it off when they told her and stood by me, but it was like they were scrambling to get anything they could. They even sent these care packages, filled with old family photos and notes from my childhood. Remember when we were all so close? My mom would scribble on sticky notes attached to the photos, like that was supposed to make me change my mind. The worst part, they kept showing up unannounced at my condo, dropping off food, random gifts, small reminders of family that they thought would wear me down. Once, they brought over a picture of me holding Derek's hand when he was a baby with a note that said, "You were his hero." When I told them to stop, my mom broke down right there, saying I was cutting them off and that it wasn't what she'd expected from her son. Then came the final straw. They called another family meeting at their cramped new apartment, one of those small places they'd had to rent after selling the house. They sat Liz and me down, all serious, and started talking about everything they'd sacrificed and how this family used to be about supporting each other. Thanksgiving was coming up, and they wanted me to host it at my condo. Oh, and they were inviting Derek too. Said it was my chance to make things right. I told them no. Said I'd be spending the holiday elsewhere. That's when they pulled out their last resort. They said if I kept turning my back on them, they'd reconsider their will. I looked at them, speechless. What inheritance? They'd already sold everything to help Derek. But here they were, holding out this empty threat like it meant something. So I called them out on it. I told them if they wanted to cut me off, fine. Said they'd given Derek everything already. And if family really meant anything, maybe they'd have thought about Liz and me instead of throwing it all away for one person. My parents were silent for a moment, shocked maybe. Then my dad leaned in with that disappointed, almost disgusted look he reserves just for me and said, "I don't know who you think you are, but this attitude is why you'll never understand what family truly means." I stood up, done with the conversation. "Family doesn't mean sacrificing your whole life to fix one person's mess," I said, and I left. Didn't even look back to see their faces. Over the next few weeks, they went quiet, which I hoped meant they'd finally backed off. Then the messages started trickling in again, the guilt-tripping texts from my mom, the passive-aggressive comments from my dad. "Thinking of you," my mom would write, or "Hope you're not too busy to remember your family." The holidays were coming up, and they sent me a long message, trying again to guilt me into hosting Thanksgiving. I ignored them, and I didn't host Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything else. I stayed with friends, enjoyed my first holiday season in years where I wasn't bending over backward to keep everyone else happy. Meanwhile, Derek and my parents were apparently still deep in their "we need to fix him" phase. Liz told me he was talking about his next business idea, some ridiculous food truck concept he'd come up with after watching a few cooking shows. I remember one night in early January getting a call from Liz. She was laughing, but there was this edge to it, like she was past frustrated. "Guess what?" she said. "Mom and Dad want me to give Derek my car. He told them he needs a vehicle for his new mobile business, and they're acting like it's the most reasonable thing in the world. They're like, 'Liz, you don't really need it, you work from home now, don't be selfish.'" We ended up talking for hours that night, swapping stories, laughing at the absurdity of it all, and, honestly, getting a little angry too. She told me about times growing up that I hadn't even known about. Like how, when she was in middle school and wanted to join a dance team, our parents had told her they couldn't afford the lessons because Derek's tutoring was more important. Or how they'd pushed her to take a summer job to help pitch in for the family, while Derek got to spend the entire summer at basketball camp. Liz and I made a pact that night. We agreed to keep our distance and start putting ourselves first. For once, we'd stop letting them guilt us into giving everything we had. We promised to have each other's backs, no matter what our parents tried to pull. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, knowing I wasn't alone in all this. By February, Derek's food truck idea had fallen through, just like everything else. I started hearing whispers that he was borrowing money from friends, taking odd jobs, scrambling to keep his head above water. Then, out of nowhere, I get a call from my parents, acting like nothing had happened. They asked if I'd talk to Derek, maybe help him find a job or give him some guidance. Said he was struggling, and they were worried about him. I told them I'd think about it. And I did, for about 2 seconds before deciding that my days of saving Derek were over. They'd spent years bailing him out, letting him make mistake after mistake with no consequences. And now they were looking at me like I was supposed to be his safety net. Again, I didn't respond, so my parents started showing up unannounced, just to talk. They'd bring up random excuses, leaving little gifts on my doorstep, notes like, "We're still family." They even brought Derek along once, hoping it'd make me cave. I refused to open the door, watching through the peephole as they stood there, shifting from foot to foot, my mom looking near tears while Derek looked bored, hands shoved in his pockets. After they left, Liz called me again. "They came by my place too," she said, sighing. This time, it was to ask if I'd consider loaning Derek a little something to help him get back on his feet. She laughed, this hollow sound that carried years of frustration. Unbelievable. The last straw came when I got an email from my dad, of all things. It was a long, rambling message about how family was the most important thing and how disappointed he was that I'd chosen to turn my back on them. He accused me of not being there for Derek and said it was my responsibility to help fix what had gone wrong. He even threw in some story about how, when he was young, he'd sacrificed everything for his family and expected the same from me. I sat there, staring at the screen, and something just clicked. They were never going to change. They were never going to see me as anything other than Derek's backup plan, the one who was supposed to be responsible while they coddled him. I realized that if I didn't put my foot down now, they'd keep showing up, keep asking, keep guilt-tripping me into being the family's cleanup crew. I replied to the email, short and to the point. "Dad, I'm done. I'm not Derek's savior. I'm not the family's bank. I'm moving on with my life, and I suggest you start holding Derek accountable instead of trying to drag Liz and me down to fix his messes. Stop contacting me unless you can respect my boundaries." I sent it. Simple as that. Since then, things have been quiet. My parents haven't called or texted, and honestly, it feels like a huge relief. Liz and I still talk all the time, and we both agree that, for once, we feel free. Free from the endless cycle of guilt, expectations, and sacrifices. Free from being held responsible for someone else's mistakes. I know they're still holding out hope that I'll come to my senses and reach out, but I'm not planning to. I spent too many years bending over backward, and it got me nothing but disappointment and resentment. If that's the price of family, I'll pass. And if Derek ever does get his act together, that's his problem.